Well, one of my reasons for being here at the conference was to talk about some of the analogies between my coming out process as a gay man and my coming out process as an atheist. And those happened in succession. I came out as a gay man when I was 19 years old. And at that time I was planning on going into the Catholic priesthood, so religion was a very important part of my life. And I left the religious order that I was affiliated with, but continued to think quite a bit about religious questions. And I was a philosophy major. I went on to do graduate work in philosophy. And one of the things I always appreciated about the Roman Catholic tradition, and I still appreciate about the Roman Catholic tradition, is there's an appreciation for the big questions. There's an intellectual tradition. There's the desire to understand the world not just through what we call sola scriptura, the Bible alone, but through rational inquiry. And so I started thinking a lot more about my reasons for believing in God and whether I actually had good reasons for believing in God. And I'd say there were two things that led me gradually to atheism. One was the problem of evil, trying to reconcile the existence of an all-good, all-knowing, all-loving God who's involved in the affairs of the world with the fact that there was evil in the world. And there was a time I thought that I could do that. I wrote papers on it. I was briefly a graduate student at Notre Dame. I wrote a paper for Al Plantinga on it. He's somebody who's been big in Christian tradition working on that problem. And I really thought that the problem could be solved. And after a while, the more I looked at it, the more I thought the thesis didn't add up. The other part of it for me was that I always thought that a good reason to believe in God was that God explained the universe, that there was something deeply mysterious about the fact that we exist, that anything exists, and that needed some explanation. The problem I began to see is that we were explaining this mystery by appealing to another mystery. So why does the universe exist? Well, God created it. Well, why does God exist? Well, that's a mystery. And it seemed to me to make a lot more sense to be content with the mystery that I knew rather than to try to explain that mystery simply by appealing to another mystery, which in many ways was even more mysterious because parts of it didn't quite add up. So over the years, I gradually gave up my religious beliefs and became an atheist. But I didn't talk about that much. I didn't speak about that publicly. I certainly didn't write about it as I wrote in the other work that I was doing, particularly in gay rights issues. And frankly, part of the reason I didn't talk about it is I worried that it would hurt my work as a gay rights advocate, that people would say, aha, you see, you gay people are all godless heathens, and this is just an example of the way that we're degenerating in society, and it's all part of one big package. But eventually I realized that it was important for me to talk more about this because, first of all, it was a matter of being true to myself. It was a matter of personal integrity, that I couldn't keep pretending that it made sense to treat the Bible, this set of books that endorse slavery and have all kinds of other problematic aspects, to treat that as infallible in any sense. I mean, it seemed very clear that human prejudice, human limitation creep into those books, and we were giving it a special deference, a special authority, and as a matter of integrity, I couldn't do that. But also, it seemed to me that our society was desperately in need, is desperately in need of a healthy dose of religious skepticism, because religion tends to license so many bad practices. Because what it ends up doing is it gives people the idea that they have infallible backing for their human prejudices. So this is not my view, they say, it's God's view. And it's interesting because I often do debates on same-sex marriage and other issues, and sometimes people will ask me to debate ministers, and I typically won't do that because what ends up happening, the audience, to them it looks like, well, here's what John Corvino says, and here's what God says. Well, who's going to win that debate? And it's not what John Corvino says and what God says. Right. It's two human beings trying to get at the truth. But so many people think that because they believe in an infallible God, that what they believe becomes infallible. And so one of the reasons I've become more outspoken about atheism is to try to inject some humility into that tradition and to point out that believing in an infallible God does not make a person infallible, to give us a more skeptical stance more generally. I do think that being in the closet about something important can cause psychological harm. I think the issues are different. I think that trying to be in the closet about my intimate relationships, about my sexual orientation and the kinds of romantic relationships I have, in many ways could be more damaging just because of the way it informs so much of my life. in the way that my lack of belief in God doesn't inform my daily life. I mean, atheism means that I don't believe in something. It's not a sort of active
right, if you're a Christian, you have a set of principles you need to follow.
Right.
Whereas,
right. So atheism is a lack of belief in God. At the same time, trying to compartmentalize these things, to hide certain things, I mean, that can take a toll after a while. Yeah, well, one of the things I've learned in coming out as a gay person that I think is very much applicable to coming out as an atheist is that it's a gradual process. It's not something that happens all at once. It's something that's ongoing each time we're in a situation where the issue comes up and we have to decide how much of myself, how much of my beliefs do I reveal. And I think it's really important as one goes through that process to find allies, to build a community that one can go to for support, to recognize that sometimes it will go well, sometimes it's not going to go so well, but that the more we are able to do that, the more we're able to find our own voice, the easier and easier it becomes. And so finding allies and accepting the fact that this is a gradual process, it's not something that happens all at once, are both really important.